You know, it's interesting how you work out what's important to somebody. You know, what really matters to somebody. Because often it's not what they say matters, often it's what they do. There's a dad in a family and he's working 6.5 days a week. He's working like 70 hours a week. He's never at home. He's always off working, and his wife is sort of saying, why don't you spend more time at home? And his kids are saying, Dad, could you help us with this? He's just never there. He's always at work. And when he's challenged about it, he says, but guys, I'm doing it for you. I wonder what's important to that bloke. Or maybe there's a girl and she's coming to Crossfire, and before she comes, she spends 3 hours in front of the mirror, just making sure that every hair is exactly right and that every kilogram of makeup is plastered in all the right places, and just making sure the fashion, you know, is just right. I wonder what really matters to her. Well, there's a guy, and he's got a new girlfriend. Thank you, word of testimony there. He's got a new girlfriend, but unfortunately for her, at the very same time he's got a new girlfriend, he's also got a new car. And he's saying to this beautiful lady, you are the most important thing in the world. Nothing else in the world matters to me more than you. But her observation is, he's spending more time on his flippin' car than he is with her. I wonder what really matters to him. Or there's a young adult goes to our church, one of our leaders, and they own every techno gadget ever invented. And man, they've got a whole collection of every technical gadget that you'd ever dream of, but they never have any money to be generous when the offertory comes around. And if you ask yourself the question, what really matters to them, you might get some very interesting answers. Because I want to suggest you can always work out what matters to someone. You can always work out what's really important to them. And it's often got nothing to do with what they say is important. You can always find out what really matters to somebody by checking 3 areas. Now here they are. Number 1, how you spend your money. Number 2, how you spend your time. And number 3, what you worry about. Now, how do you work out as a Christian what really matters to you? What really matters to you in your spiritual journey? I want to suggest it's the same 3 questions which will give away what really matters to you. Because often what a Christian says is important to them actually isn't what they're spending their time on, it isn't what they're spending their money on, and it's not what they're worried about. Sometimes what a Christian says they're trusting in is actually not what they're really trusting in. And you can always check how you're going as a Christian by simply checking those same 3 questions. How do you spend your time? What are you really investing your time into? How do you spend your money? What are the things that you're pouring your dollars into? And what do you actually worry about? What's the thing that concerns you more than anything else in the world? Now, I think we're learning some very powerful stuff as we work through the Sermon on the Mount. And week after week at Crossfire, Jesus is challenging us in how to be a genuine disciple. And I want to suggest to you there is a huge difference between being genuine in something and being a counterfeit. You like the jacket? I bought this at the markets. This is funky. Look, brand name. This is cool. I thought, man, Billabong, I love it. I said, how much? He said, $10. I said, is it genuine? He said, is it genuine? I bought it. You think it's pretty good? When I got home, I had a closer look at it. Look, can you read this here? Billihong. It's made by the Billy Hong Clothing Company in China. It's a fake. It's a total fake. Looks like the real thing. It is not genuine at all. It's a total fake. It's a bunch of rubbish. There's my jacket. Wouldn't it be crazy if as a Christian you walked around looking like the real thing but were actually counterfeit? Can you see the difference? If you look on the outside like you're the genuine disciple, but deep down you're just a cheap imitation, there is no comparison. And tonight, as I look into God's Word with you, I want to help you to develop genuine trust. That the thing you're trusting in is the thing that, in fact, will get you through life. And if you want to work out what you really trust, you answer the same three questions. How do you spend your time? How do you spend your money? And what do you worry about? Let's check those out. So here's the chance to turn to your Bibles. We're in Matthew's Gospel. We're in chapter 6 and we're going to verse 19. Now, if you don't have your own Bible personally, see if you're close enough to someone else so you can look on, because you'll learn so much better when you can see what Jesus says right in front of you. Matthew chapter 6, verse 19. And we're looking at checkpoint number 1. How do you spend your time? Let's look at it. Matthew 6:19. Here we go. Jesus says, "Do not store up for yourself treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy, and where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourself treasures in heaven, where moth and rust do not destroy, and where thieves do not break in and steal." On the issue of how you spend your time, Jesus says there are 2 choices. He says there's a clear choice you can make as to how you're going to spend your time. You can either put your time and effort into accumulating all the goodies this world has to offer, or you can put your time and effort into accumulating the treasures that belong to heaven. You can focus your attention on the things which ultimately have no value in God's kingdom, or you can spend your time and effort focusing on the things that have eternal value and will last forever in God's kingdom. Now, let's look at those 2 things. Treasures on earth. Now, here's the problem. They are so attractive. It is so great when you've got something new and you own it and you can look at it and you can use it. Man, I remember my first car. It was just brilliant. It was a 1959 Volkswagen Beetle. It was so cute. He said a little green car, didn't have a petrol gauge. I didn't put him in at that stage. You just had to work out when you were going to run out of petrol. Didn't have flashing lights to turn a corner. Had a little arm that flew out of the side. They had a little light in it. They're called trafficators. But this was my first car. I saved up. It cost me $300. Man, I only had I saved up $600. I spent $300, and I loved that car. And I washed it every week, and I polished it, and filled in where the stone chips were, and painted the tyres black, and put little red rims around the tyre to make them go faster. I mean, I loved it. And you know, if you get something new, it's just so good. The new outfit. You know, you're in the shop, and you're looking at, oh, it's a lovely outfit. And you try it on, and the salesperson says, oh, it's so you. And you think, oh my goodness, and you're saving up, and you get it, and you go to your first party, and it's just brilliant. You love it. Treasures on earth are just so good. Or the new mobile phone. Now, this is the good. If you've got your phone there, grab your phone now, turn it off. Don't want any interruptions. Make sure your phone's turned off. But you know when you get a brand new phone, you sign up for a new deal with a new carrier, and you get a contract with them for the next 62 years, and you get a new, and it's got everything. It makes phone calls. It does SMSs, it's got a little blue light behind everything. You can check the rugby league scores as you go. And you love that new phone. Treasures on earth can be like that. Or you get the latest computer, and man, it's smaller and tighter and funkier and sexier than the last computer you have. Here's the problem that Jesus says with all those things. He says, treasures on earth where moths destroy them, and rust destroys them, and thieves break in and steal. Because if you've ever had anything new, it's not new for very long. That brand new car you get, my goodness, it's got a few dings in it before you know it. That outfit, which was just so fashionable, 6 months later, it's not in fashion anymore. And you wouldn't be seen dead wearing it anywhere. Or that new computer or the new mobile phone that was, just so small and sexy. Man, a year later, it's just so embarrassing. It's just so slow. It's just so big. It's just so clunky. Or man, you got your new iPod, and man, this is This is the coolest thing you've ever had. And then it freezes over and the screen cracks, and suddenly that brand new thing that made you feel so good has worn out, destroyed, got out of touch, and it's just so embarrassing. And Jesus simply says, don't waste your time spending all your effort and all the time you've got accumulating every goodie that the world has to offer you. He says, because they wear out. They break down. They disappoint you. And more importantly, they never satisfy you. Now, here's the problem. You think that they will satisfy you. If you could just have a new, if you could just have more of, if you could just have a bigger, you think you'd be satisfied. But you know you never are. Now, let me show you. I have one of my favourite products down here. Let's have a look at this. These are beauties. Pods. Are these good or what? Now, ingeniously crunchy, it says. Now, here's the question. How many pods would it take to satisfy you? Let's imagine you've bought this, you own it. You don't have to share it with anyone. You rip it open. Would you be satisfied with just one? Or would you be thinking, if I have two, I will have twice as much satisfaction? Would you be satisfied with two? If you're watching TV or something and this packet is open right next to you, I would think inside about 10 minutes you could demolish the entire packet and you would still not be satisfied. You might be sick, but you won't be satisfied. And you see, the manufacturers know this. They know if they can tempt you just to have a little bit more of their product and you'll spend the money, they know you'll never be satisfied. Now, I discovered that their entire marketing strategy is actually described on the packet. Now, listen to this. This is a packet of pods purchased from my local supermarket. Here we go. And you will find the manufacturer's strategy. They know Jesus is right. They know it will never satisfy you, but they're going to try and con you that it will. Here we go. Ever found yourself licking an ice cream stick? Seriously, it says it here. Or eating biscuit crumbs off your lap? You have, haven't you? And we know why. It's because you've finished something tasty. The key word being finished. Kaput. The final siren on your enjoyment has been blown and you can't handle it. That's why we created Pods Crunchy Biscuits. They start off as biscuit wafer cups baked in our revolutionary Wackrone oven, which makes them amazingly light and crunchy. In these wafer cups, a delicious Twix filling. And in each pack there are 40 of these delectable suckers. And they're bite-sized. See the genius yet? That's right. You can have one and eat it. And it tastes great. And then when your brain calls out and says, hey you, give me more of whatever that was, you can reach into the pack and have another. And that, my learned friend, is why enjoyment now lasts longer. Did you realise an entire marketing strategy to try and make you feel satisfied by simply having one more? Hey, listen, one of my other favourite little snackies is here. There it is. Oh, mint balls. Oh, mint slice. Did you know there are instructions on the back of the packet? Try and work out the relationship that the manufacturer wants you to have with your mint slice balls. Here we go. There are instructions right here. Kiss them. You thought you were just going to pop them in your mouth. First instruction, kiss them. Crunch them. Seduce them. Roll them down the aisle. Nibble them. Juggle them. Suck them. Melt them in your mouth. Chomp them. Devour them. Spin them. Love them. Who are they kidding? Love them. I can assure you, you can love them all you want. They ain't never going to love you back. Does that make sense? They look that they will satisfy you, but you know you could munch your way through 10 packets. You will never feel the satisfaction that you're after. Jesus is saying, simply don't put all your effort into things that are not going to satisfy you. Don't put all your effort into treasures on earth, which will never give you the lasting satisfaction you need. What he says is, put your time and effort into treasures in heaven. These are things that last for eternity. These are things that will never break down. These are things that will never be outdated. These are things that will never get taken away from you. And you know what some of these treasures are. You know what some of the treasures of heaven are. Eternal life. Being forgiven by God. Growing as God's child, being a genuine disciple, having a ministry to others, helping your friend become a Christian. These are all treasures in heaven, and you know they last for eternity. You know they're more valuable than any price that you can pay, and you know that they will always satisfy. And Jesus simply says, put your time on the things that will last. If you're trying to work out what's important to you, I said there were 3 questions. Number 1, how you're spending your time. Well, here's checkpoint number 2. How do you spend your money? Now, wouldn't it be great if somehow you could check how your heart is going for God? You know, if you have a physical heart difficulty. I had a problem a year or 2 ago. I had this pain in my chest. Like someone had got an iron bar and slid it under my skin. And it was... So I went to the doctor, and he put me on this treadmill thing with all these wires rigged up to my heart, and they actually had a readout of how my heart was going. And they found which bits were strong and which bits were healthy, and they found the bits that were diseased. They found the bits that needed urgent attention. Now, wouldn't it be brilliant if somehow we could rig up a readout to your spiritual heart, that you would know whether you were genuine for God, that you would know where you're on fire, and you'd know the bits of your spiritual life that needed surgery because they were underdeveloped and weak? Well, Jesus is about to show us that you can always check how your spiritual heart is going. Here's 2 questions. First question. Where is your treasure? Now look down in verse 21. Jesus says, for where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. You want to know how your heart is going for Jesus? He simply says, where's your treasure? That is, whatever you are pouring your dollars into at the moment will show God, and it will show everybody else, exactly where your heart is at. That makes sense? Whatever you're pouring your dollars into right now will actually show where your heart is at. Because you remember that Jesus said, love the Lord your God with all your heart. So there's the first question. Where is your treasure? Here's the second question. Who is your master? Look down at verse 24. Jesus says, no one can serve 2 masters. Either he will hate the one and love the other, or he'll be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. Now you understand the concept of having 2 masters. I coach a football team, and one year when the kids were younger, about under 12, one of the other dads was helping out in the coaching. And I discovered that he used to stand on the other side of the field. And I discovered after a while, whatever instructions I was given to the team on this side, he was yelling out the opposite on the other side. Now, imagine trying to play a game where the 2 coaches are calling out different instructions at the same time. One saying, get up further, attack, get into an attacking position. The other one saying, no, hold back. You'd be lost. You'd be crazy. You cannot serve 2 masters. How many people here are learning to drive at the moment? Where are they? Come on, put your hands up. All the learner drivers. Isn't this the most wonderful time of your life? Okay, learner drivers, think about this one. Imagine that you go out for one of your driving practices and Dad is sitting next to you in the passenger seat and Mum is sitting in the back seat. I'm suggesting, by the way, this is not a good idea. Imagine having two different driving instructors telling you opposite things at the same time. Your dad is saying, just pull a little bit more to the left. Yeah, just a little bit more to your left. And your mum is saying, you're going to crash, you're going to crash, you're going to crash, put the brakes up, put the brakes. You can't do it. You can't have two driving instructors at the one time. Right? You understand, no man can serve two masters. Now, look at the conclusion that Jesus draws with that very sensible statement that you can't serve two masters. Look back at verse 24. He says, no one can serve two masters. Either he will hate the one and love the other, or he'll be devoted to the one and despise the other. Look at his conclusion. You cannot serve both God and... Now, if I were Jesus, I would have finished it differently. I would have said something like, you cannot serve both God and the devil. I would have said, you can't serve both God and evil. I would have said, you can't serve both God and sin. But that's not his conclusion. Have a look. End of verse 24. What does it say? You cannot serve both God and money. Why does he say that? Now, Jesus is not saying that Christians can't have money. My suspicion is God wants you to have buckets of money so that you can be so generous and pour lots of your money to bless other people and bring them to Jesus. Nothing wrong with a Christian having money. But here's the question. What is ruling you? What is controlling you? What is influencing you as you make your decisions? Is your world ruled by God, or is your world ruled by money? And let me tell you why Jesus makes that distinction. Because if you are serving your money more and more, then you will give your God away more and more. But if you're serving your God more and more, you will be giving away your money more and more. Now, have you got the distinction? If you're serving your money more and more, you're going to be giving God away more and more. But if you're serving God more and more, you will find you are giving your money away more and more. When you can give something away, it proves you're not mastered by it. And if you can't give your money away, if you can't use your money to bless and other people, then you are mastered by it. You are controlled by it. And Jesus says there's only one person that's meant to be your master, and it is God. I said there were three questions. First one was, how do you spend your time? Second one, how do you spend your money? Third checkpoint to work out if you are genuine in your trust is this one. What do you worry about? What occupies your mind? What do you get concerned about? What do you think up late night thinking through and trying to get a solution to? What are the issues which you put blood, sweat and tears into trying to solve? Now here's the question I want you to think about. Does this occupy you? Do you find yourself always thinking about, what will I eat? What will I drink? What will I wear? Now I suspect if you're honest, that's what occupies your mind a lot of the time. Even right now, as you're sitting here listening or watching on the DVD, you're thinking to yourself, when do we eat? I heard there was hot chocolate at the end. Is the snack shack open tonight? I didn't see it. Is it there? How can I get to the Coke machine? We might be here trying to get you to dream the vision of the pearly gates of heaven, but your vision is the golden arches of McDonald's. And you're thinking, if I could have a pizza and a Coke, I'd be satisfied. Come on, you think like that. It occupies, you want to feed the hunger. Or the other question, what will I wear? What will I put on? Now, can I just say, here at Crossfire, there are some very snappy dresses. Come on, you guys look $1 million. Brilliant stuff. But you know when we go away on camp, And we say something like, only pack a small amount of luggage. Have you seen the luggage that some kids bring on camp? Man, they got a new outfit morning, noon and night for every day we're there. What you're wearing sometimes matters to people. Last year I was speaking at a camp down in Victoria, and from all over the state, 3,000 young people had gathered for a whole weekend, and I got to talk to them about their life. And I was speaking a message, something about that what God wants to do is change you on the inside, not just to make you look good on the outside. He wants your heart renewed. He wants your heart on fire. He wants the inner person to be like Jesus, not just worrying what the outer person looks like. That was roughly something the message. At the end of the meeting, out in the foyer, there were 2 stands. Karen and I had a stand with some biblical resources that would help people build their hearts, that would help them get on fire for Jesus, that would help them study the Bible and change the world. That was our little stall. Next to us, there was a Christian clothing company. And I'm sure they're a great Christian clothing company. They had clothes with Christian slogans on them. Have you got the 2 stalls? They're the only 2 stalls. 3,000 young people come out of the building. Which stand did they all flock to? Yes. I love that optimism. Karen and I are standing there surrounded by resources that would feed them as Christians. They all look at this thing at the top. Isn't it lovely mauve? Oh, look, there's a scarf that goes. They've got a little handbag with a fish on it. Isn't it lovely? It was probably beautiful clothing, but that's what was occupying them. What will we wear? And to be honest, that's what a lot of us think about. What do we eat? What do we drink? What do we wear? Jesus says, verse 25, I tell you, don't worry about your life. Don't worry about what you'll drink or about your body, what you'll wear. God's saying now they're important things. He wants you to have food. He wants you to have clothes. But he's saying there's a lot more crucial things that he'd like you to be focusing on. Can I give you the 3 reasons that Jesus gives why worrying about what you eat and what you drink and what you wear is actually useless? 3 reasons why this shouldn't be what occupies your mind. Number 1, God's got bigger things for you. Verse 25. He says, I tell you, do not worry about your life or what you'll eat or drink or about your body, what you'll wear. Is not life more important than food? Isn't your body more important than clothes? Jesus is saying there is bigger stuff that I want you to focus on. Jesus is saying, I don't want you to spend all your time worrying about what you're going to eat or what you're going to drink or what you're going to put on. He says, I'm calling you to be a genuine disciple. I want you to have genuine success. I'm calling you to have a new level of genuine obedience. I want you to immerse yourself in genuine worship. He says, there's a world I want you to go out and change. You've got friends at your school that I want you to talk to about me, he says. He says, I want you to have a lifetime of ministry and discipleship that I'm calling you to. He's saying to you, there are nations of this world that he wants to call to him through you. Far bigger things than what you're going to wear to the next party. And God says, why don't you let me worry about your food and your drink and your clothes? God says, are you willing to trust me that I will look after that for you? Or do you distrust me so much that you've got to spend all your time worrying about it? He says, I want you to focus on changing your life to be faithful disciples. He says, I want you to focus your life on winning the world to follow me one life at a time. And he says, you're saying you don't have any time for ministry because you're too busy doing other things. He's saying that you're thinking that it's a pressure year of study and you can't spend your time going to Bible study group because you've got to study. He's saying you say you can't be bothered talking to your friends about God because you think they'd never listen and it'll be a waste of time. You think if you give generously when the offering comes around, you won't have money for Macca's that night. And he's saying, don't you trust me? If you put my values and my kingdom first, can't you trust me to look after that sort of stuff? So there's the first reason that just worrying about eating and drinking and wanting your clothes is useless. God's got bigger things for you. Here's a second reason. God says, that he will look after you. Look down in verse 26. He says, look at the birds of the air. They don't sow or reap or store away in barns, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Aren't you more valuable than they are? He's saying, look at the birds. He says, they fly around. Yeah, they build nests and do stuff, but they don't have jobs like you do. They don't work in factories. They don't clock on and clock off. They don't have credit cards. They don't sit at their computer doing the internet banking. But somehow, God feeds them. Every day the birds have got food. And if God's going to feed the birds like that, won't he feed you? Verse 28. It says, and why do you worry about your clothes? He says, see how the lilies of the field grow. They don't labour or spin. Yet I tell you, not even Solomon in all his splendour was dressed like one of them. If that is how God clothes the grass of the field, which is here today and tomorrow's thrown into the fire, will he not more clothe you, O you of little faith? He says, look at a flower garden. Maybe out in the outback, just wildflowers growing, or maybe where someone's arranged all the flowers together. But they come out in the most beautiful colours. And Jesus is saying they didn't buy those clothes on their credit card. They didn't have to go down to the bargain bins when the catalogues came through the letterbox and fight and scream to buy those clothes. God actually clothes them in greater majesty than he clothed King Solomon, one of the most splendiferous kings of the Old Testament. And Jesus simply says, if God will clothe flowers like that, which last for a couple of days, don't you reckon he will look after you as well? So there's the second reason, that it's just not used. It's not worth it, putting all your time and effort into that. Here's the third reason. Number 3, worrying gets you nowhere. Verse 27. Who of you by worrying can add a single hour to his life? I remember when I was a boy, age 12, that sort of age. I really wanted to grow and develop into a man. And, the other guys were sort of growing a little bit taller, a little bit faster. And I thought, what's going on here? What's the deal? And I always wanted to be 6 foot tall. I'm still working on it. And I used to worry about it. I thought, I really want to be tall. I'm going to be short. I want to be shorter. The other kid's bigger than me. Do you think that by worrying, I could add 1 centimetre to my height? It's actually wasted energy. Worrying gets you nowhere. So what's the answer? Jesus simply says, trust God. Verse 31. He says, don't worry saying, what will we eat? What shall we drink? What shall we wear? For the pagans run after all these things. And your heavenly Father knows that you need them. Seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you. He's saying, don't worry. What will we eat? What do we drink? What do we wear? That's why we have castle towers. That's why we have shopping malls. They provide that answer. What you eat, what you drink, what you wear. In your mind, go to Castle Towers right now, your favourite shopping mall, whatever it is, and take away every shop that sells food, take away every shop that sells drink, take away every shop that sells clothes. There's not a whole lot of shops left at this point. Shopping malls are the reason to answer this question. What do we eat? What do we drink? What do we wear? And Jesus makes the point, only non-Christians have got to worry about that. And he's saying, why are you worried about it? He's saying, flipping heck, give the non-Christians something to do. They may as well spend their life worrying about what they're going to eat, what they're going to drink, what they're going to wear. Without Jesus, their life is pointless. If you don't have Jesus running your life, there is no point to it. I mean, without Jesus as your Lord, what do? You go to work to earn the money, to buy the food, to get the energy, to go to work, to earn the money, to buy the food, to get the energy, to go. It just keeps going like that. And if you're not sold out on being a genuine disciple, there's not a lot of point to life. And if you're not sure what you're doing on this planet, well, Jesus says, I guess you may as well make sure that you're well dressed and well fed. But wouldn't that be terrible if that's all there was to your life? God knows what you need. God has called you to something bigger. God has called you to something different. God has given you an absolute and genuine purpose to your life. There are miracles that he wants to do through you. And so he takes you to one verse in the Bible which will get everything in your life into place. This is one verse that will put your life in perspective. One verse that will give you wisdom as you make decisions as to how to spend your time. One verse which will help you in a big study year to know how to approach your final year of school and still honour Jesus. One verse that will stop you just stuffing around and wasting your time and being a counterfeit disciple. In fact, if you're ever going to have one Bible verse tattooed on your hip, this would be the one. Sam Lowe, world's greatest youth pastor, are you here? Sam, come on down. I want to give Sam a big welcome out here. Come on down. This one verse is so central. Now, we need to point out a few things. When Sam did this, he was an adult. He wasn't under 18. He made this decision all by himself. In fact, went with his mum, yes? Aged 19 or 20, and had this tattooed on his hip. Let's see if we can have a look. Here it is. Can you see it? Matthew 6:33. A great verse to run your hip by. This is a verse for life. Can we have a round of applause for Mr. Sam Lowe? Here is what that verse says, because here is the verse that makes sense of your life. Let me read it to you. Have a look. Matthew 6:33. Seek first God's kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well. Let me show you what that means. When you put the things of God and his kingdom as number one in your life, when you make the things of God's kingdom your number one priority, then all the other things fall into place. But if you don't have God as your number one priority, if Jesus is not the number one in your life, that means everything else is in the wrong place. Seek first God's kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be added to you as well. What would it really look like if we took that seriously? What would we be like as a group if that's what ruled our lives? What would we be like as a church if that principle was operating through everything that we did? We would be passionate about prayer. We would be generous in our giving. You'd have so many of your friends from your school coming to Crossfire, we wouldn't know what to do with them. Our Bible studies would keep running over time because people would be praying so much. We wouldn't be able to fit everybody in church. And you would be just a faithful disciple, trusting God with your whole life. You would be confident knowing that God was planning every step for you, and you could leave the worrying to him so you could get on with being his person. You would be leaving aside the sin that is now dragging you down, that you think you can't do without, because you would trust that God would satisfy you as you serve him as his person. And you would know that your heart was genuine. And you would know that your trust was genuine. And you would know that as a disciple, you are genuine. Matthew 6, verse 33. Seek first God's kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well. Thank you.